Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. John Jacob Mubarak is my spiritual leader that I didn't know I was searching for, and he appeared in front of me at Rhythmia. So I was lucky enough to have a life-transforming week through 4 ayahuasca ceremonies and several workshops at a place called Rhythmia. And I felt compelled to share the amazing and unbelievable transformational stories of some of the ladies on the retreat with me. In fact, all 75 of them had amazing stories, and I had to narrow it down to a few. So apologies that I couldn't share everyone's story. They all wanted to share, and I can't wait to share those with you. But before I do that, let's explore who John is and what is Rhythmia. So John, otherwise known as JJ, is, I guess, I don't know, maybe his title is COO or marketing director or whatever it is. He's the dude at Rhythmia, which is a medical license, everything included resort in Costa Rica. So Jared Powell, a successful businessman and the founder of Rhythmia, started his journey toward optimal health and total well-being through his search for the purest forms of medicine and most effective ways of healing. Rhythmia, a life-transforming luxury health and wellness centre, was born. Essentially, it's a safe place to spend a week doing 4 amazing ayahuasca ceremonies and a whole lot more. So JJ lives a life of surrender in service to the spirit of truth and the grand idea of a world that works for the best and highest individual and collective good. In a very condensed version, after completing his study at Agape under Reverend Michael, JJ today has ended up living in both Los Angeles and Costa Rica. I'm very jealous of this. And in his words, his life is a demonstration of how spirit moves in unexpected ways to bring us to a life that is more than we could ever imagined. JJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So it's an absolute pleasure to have met you and to have you on the show. And I just want to say, how did you end up at Rhythmia and how would you describe the place?
Well, first, let me thank you, Ali. It was such a pleasure meeting you. We had such a great week together, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I'm really grateful to be on the show. It's a real honor. So thank you. And the question is, how did I end up at Rhythmia? And how would I describe Rhythmia? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to say that life led me to Rhythmia, but it came from a place that was outside of my preconceived notions or past experiences. You know, so often when we are trying to make the next step in our lives, right? We start to do a vision board. We start to write down the things, what I want and how to get there, right? And then all of a sudden we get bogged down in the how-to about it. And I came to Rhythmia in a really interesting way. I was the sales manager of a yacht company, a luxury yacht company here in Los Angeles, and was studying with Reverend Michael for years and wanting to transition out of working at the yacht company. It was a great place, all of that, but I wanted to transition out of there. And I got into my head, well, I'm a practitioner, I'm a spiritual counselor now. I've been licensed and gone through that process. So given my past experience, I thought that the way to transition out of fantasy yachts was to find an office, start seeing clients, charge a certain amount per hour, see so many clients a week. That would supplement my income from what I was making at the, very logical, very third dimensional, very lockstep. While I was working on that path, Spirit had a whole different idea. And out of the blue, a phone call came from a friend who said, "Hey, we're running this stem cell clinic down in Costa Rica, and we need somebody who can come talk to people about this treatment and kind of sell the treatment. But it's not a traditional sales job, and we need them to be kind of spiritual because it's a spiritual place. So we really need like a spiritual salesperson. Well, if life hadn't prepared me for that, so I went down in 2017, October, November of 2017, and began working for the stem cell clinic. And it was not very satisfying because it was just a recapitulation of fantasy yachts, just another sales position. Even though I was, everybody on the outside was, oh my God, you've got the greatest life. You're living in Costa Rica. I'm so jealous. But I felt very much, for me, sort of sequestered in this place and separate from my community and my family. And it was just more of just kind of selling, even though it was in a spiritually, and couched in a spiritual setting. And as spirit moves us, I was there so that I could really get to know Geri. And then at the end of this time, as I really realized, hey, I don't want to, as great as this is working, it's easy work, it's great money, it's all that good stuff, and it's in Costa Rica, but something in me said, this isn't it. This isn't your landing spot. So I said, I want to return to LA, or I want to leave this job. I don't know what's next, but I want to leave this job, not knowing what was next. And out of that came the request from Geri or Gerard to be the assistant director of Rhythmia. And the director is Geri. So, like so COO or VP, something around that, titles, whatever that means. But basically, that's how I came to be there, in a rather circuitous route. But each step along the way, as I look back in hindsight, I was being guided, even in the midst of some dark nights of the soul and some real questioning, in the summer of last year, as I was trying to figure out, well, this is really good. This sales job is really good, and it's in Costa Rica, and it's really cool, but it's not quite right. And it took some chutzpah to say, everything's really good right now, but my heart isn't satisfied. There's something more. I'm being called for something more. And when we take that leap of faith, and initiate something, then providence moves in, and all sorts of unforeseen assistances and aid comes to us, guidance, requests, offers that we wouldn't have known, right, outside of our past experience. I'll put a period there because I've been talking a lot.
No, great. And so what is Rhythmia? How would you describe the place?
So, Rhythmia is a program that really combines ancient wisdom and modern techniques of healing, so that we can really create the life that we love and awaken to our highest potential. And the program, so we call it a life advancement center, right? And we do that through ayahuasca ceremonies, through yoga, through metaphysical classes, through cleanses, hydrocolonic cleanses, transformational breath work, massages, farm to table organic food, all set in this all-inclusive luxury resort in Costa Rica. And there's some pretty amazing statistics that happen when you come to Rhythmia, to this life advancement center, that will kind of also help articulate what it's about. So, for example, 93.26 or something like that % of people, since we started the resort 4 years ago, 93.26% of people have received a miracle, a transformational miracle in their lives from their stay at Rhythmia. So that's a survey that we do, an exit survey. So as you're leaving the resort, Allie, you probably filled that out too. And did you receive your miracle? Yes. And a miracle at Rhythmia is a very specific kind of miracle. It is a merging with your soul, seeing who you've become, merging with your soul, and healing your heart. And I can explain a little more about that, but to really focus on what Rhythmia is, that's one statistic that's really important, that people receive a life-changing miracle when they stay. And then 97, this is an amazing statistic, 97% of people report 6 months later. So this sticks, right? It's not just I feel great that week and then you go back to your life and forget about it. But 96% or 97% of people 6 months later report that the week that they were at Rhythmia was the week that changed their life. Those are really powerful statistics that kind of help you see what Rhythmia is about when we say it's a transformational program that heals your life and helps you create a life that you love and awaken to your highest potential.
Yeah, that's really interesting, JJ. And one of the things that you just mentioned there that I have to point out is that it sticks with you. And I guess that's how I would compare, like, you're familiar with all those like motivational seminars that you go to and you leave and you're feeling really high and then a couple of days later you're just back to your normal self. I feel like for some reason, and I can't place it, but the practice and obviously the ayahuasca ceremonies have got a lot to do with this, but also the breath work that we do and everything else combined, I feel like it's almost you're open up to something that you can't then hide again. So it sort of stays with you. Do you have like a better way to explain that?
That's so beautifully said, Allie. Well, yes. I mean, I from what I can see, the difference is, and this might be a good place to sort of speak about the miracle and why it sticks, right? Because basically, when we say you receive a miracle at Rhythmia, the first thing is that you see who you've become. And we say see who you've become as a result of the split, meaning every one of us between the ages of 1 to 5, by design, splits from ourselves. Something happens, some trauma, and it's a trauma because children are basically super self-centered. Everything revolves around us. So anything that happens, it could be we didn't get fed on time, or it could be something really traumatic. You were molested. I mean, it could be anything on that continuum of moderate to really horrid, right? Something happens that's traumatic. And because we are self-centered as children, we think that we caused that. I didn't get fed on time. It's because I did something, and therefore I have to become something else in order to get the love and the nurturing that I want. That's a fundamental premise of the split, right? So I split from myself. I become something else. Whatever projection I think I have to be in order to get nurtured, loved, protected, whatever it is. And in that split, that's by design. And then we move through our lives playing a role of someone who we think we must be. And so the first piece of unraveling this is to see who we've become in our lives as a result of the split. For me, as the last of 6 kids, I saw, that who I became as a result of my split. For me, it was I got left. I grew up in a loving environment, but still, you're the youngest of 6, and your brothers and sisters are going off, or they're playing Monopoly, or they're going out on a date, and you're like, "Where are you going? I want to go." That little simple thing ended up in my life as somebody's getting something that I should get, or why do they get it and I don't? And I was living my life in this sort of FOMO, fear of missing out, and somebody else is getting something that I deserve. Why? And this sort of, it's unfair, right? But when we see who we've become as a result of this split, then the next thing that happens is we can merge back with our soul. We can merge back into the wholeness that we are. And because your soul doesn't want to merge back if you don't see who you've become, you're going to keep doing the same things over again. And so we say, how do you know if you're split? Well, if the song remains the same, but the faces change. You're in your 10th job, and same complaints. You're in your 15th boyfriend or girlfriend, and it's always the same, always ends. It's the song remains the same, but the faces change. Or if you feel like, we call it blah, blah, blah. Like, I used to like doing this, but I don't like it anymore. I don't even know what I like anymore. This sort of, it's because you've been playing a role all your life. And so those are 2 earmarks of how do you know you've split. So once you can see who you've become as a result of this split, how you're walking in life as a result of this split, then your soul is ready to come back. And when you've merged with your soul, when you come back to this sense of wholeness, then all sorts of healings occur. We say heal your heart, but it's a healing of, forgiveness. It's a healing of self-love. It's a healing of physical healing. We've seen it's a psychological healing, all sorts of healings. This is why it sticks, because you go to a motivational seminar, you leave the seminar, you haven't addressed the fundamental issue of why you split. And so it's like you're on remote control, or not remote control, autopilot. So the motivational seminar gives you the ability to put your hands on the wheel and kind of turn the wheel a little bit to another direction. It feels good. But the minute you let up, that autocorrect goes right back to the course that you've been living on. And that's why you kind of fade back into the way you've been. But when you see who you've become and merge with your soul, the autopilot settings are different now. And so your autopilot is whole and complete, and you walk through life differently. Does that make sense?
Well, it does to me, because I've experienced it. I wonder if it does to other people. But I guess what I'd like to say, JJ, is that the split concept I'd heard of before. And funnily enough, I actually felt before coming to Rhythmia that maybe I shouldn't go, because I didn't feel like I was sort of stuffed up enough, if that makes sense. I didn't feel like I had deep enough psychological issues to attend. And when I got there, I realized, hey, there's people here who have had all sorts of traumatic events in their life, and they definitely should be here, but maybe I don't need to be. And then you explained really well the split, and it could be such a small thing, but it doesn't matter, because it's a big thing in a child's life, no matter how small it is. And so that then gave me the permission to explore what that was. And even though to someone else it may be a very small thing, it's actually affected your whole life. So it's not a small thing at all.
Well said. And the process of awakening to one's true self and highest potential is never a finished project. It's infinite. We're infinite. We're infinite beings, and the process of awakening is infinite. So no matter how much work you've done, spiritual, psychological, self-help, no matter what, there's more. There's another level. So that's another beautiful thing about plant medicine, is it meets you where you're at. And if you're coming to this as a really hurt individual who's dealing with deep traumas in your life, it's a great place to start. If you're coming to it as someone who's been on the spiritual path for many years and has done a lot of work, there's still another entry point for you, another place to enter and to awaken further to your highest potential.
Yeah. And do you know what I loved about it? I feel like it was like 15 years of psychology in 4 days of ayahuasca, because I'm not one who feels like I need to see a psychologist or even really talk about things. Like, it doesn't really seem to sort of help. Plus, I don't like to try and analyze things too much. So I went into the first ayahuasca ceremony not even really thinking about, although I know that was sort of more like the topic was, who have you become? I wasn't really thinking about that. But interestingly, you mentioned ayahuasca meets you where you're at. And that just was addressed for me. Is that common? Do most people sort of see this split or see who they've become in the actual ceremony of ayahuasca? And if so, how and why does that happen?
It happens. It can happen at any time. For example, you go into ceremony, but it's still, it could be happening the next day, in the shower. It could happen, it doesn't have to be in the actual ceremony. And this idea of the split, right? It's really by design, and it's really meant for us to come back to ourselves. And it's our trajectory. Most people do accomplish this, but for the majority of people, it's close to death. It's when people are at the end of their lives that all of a sudden they realize, oh, that unforgiveness that I've been holding on to for so many years, how worthless, how pointless. Let me forgive that person. Or, we hear those stories all the time of people making great realizations about the importance of life at the end of their life. So ayahuasca as a consciousness, as a sacred medicine that is a consciousness, meets you where you're at. And it does, like you said, it's 40 years of psychology or psychoanalysis or 40 hours, whatever you said, in one setting. It's because as the plant, I believe in pan consciousness. In other words, there's consciousness in everything. And this plant has a consciousness that meets us. And if you do it wrong, it's going to answer every question that you have. What should I be doing? Is this the right job? What's my next step? It's going to answer all those questions. But there's always more questions. But plant medicine done right eliminates the questions. I just know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I just know this is the person I'm supposed to be with, right? There's just a deep knowing because, and I love the way that you said it, you're not interested in doing the psychoanalysis. I use the example of a spider web. If you think of a circular spider web, it's got two, like an X. Those are the anchor points of the spider web. And then the spider goes around in circles. And every time he goes around, he meets one of those baselines on the spider web, right? And it creates a circle. Psychoanalysis is like going to every one of those intersections and like plucking it, right? Every time that circle meets the base X. Doing ayahuasca like just sweeps away the whole spider web. Right. It's just takes away that anchor, the anchor line that's holding the web down. It just kicks that out. So in other words, we could go through each particular trauma we had in our lives. Oh, when this happened and this happened and this happened, and understand some aspects of ourselves. That's very valuable. But to speed up the process, right, and to get with efficiency, ayahuasca ceremonies in the Rhythmia way helps to just eliminate the anchoring beliefs that have you spin that web of confusion. And all of a sudden there's clarity.
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it. I feel like I heard you talk about that and I'm like, yeah, I don't see that happening. But one of the biggest things that I got out of the medicine was just pure decisiveness about everything and the intuition just taking over my life. And I feel like I've always been in fight with intuition and just sort of holding it back and not listening. And now it's just like, this is what I'm doing. This is the answer to that. I don't have to think about things. And it's just this sense of freedom and relief. Is that a common feeling?
Wow, that's so beautiful, Allie. Yes. I mean, that's really it. I mean, we talk about that in a lot of our classes at Rhythmia, is that, asking, we have people come to us with pages of questions, about their lives and all these, intentions that they have. And we say, you can keep all those intentions. Focus on these 3 group intentions. Show me who I've become, merge me back with my soul, heal my heart. And if you get those 3, it'll eliminate all the other questions that you have. And so what you're experiencing, that decisiveness, that clarity, it's like the light of the eternal wisdom and intelligence of all of the universe is constantly shining. Ayahuasca is always shining through the windows. The grit and grime of the journey of our lives are like, blinds on the window that's blocking the light. The light's always shining. We're just blocking it. There's something that happened that's blocking that light. And so ayahuasca ceremonies in the whole Rhythmia way, the ceremonies, the food, the breath work, the colonics, the massage, the yoga, the whole process, the group setting, the classes, everything works together to help you clean those perceptual windows, pull back the blinds that have been blocking the light, and all of a sudden the wisdom and intelligence that's always been there shines through. So that the ceremonies help clean the perceptual windows so that the light of the eternal can shine through you. That's the decisiveness that you're experiencing, the intuition that you're experiencing. It's always been there. We're just blocking it.
That's true. And so perhaps the question I should have asked right at the start, what is ayahuasca?
Great question. Ayahuasca is an ancient indigenous plant medicine. It is a leaf and a vine, and it contains hallucinogenic properties as well as anti-inflammatory properties and neurogenesis producing properties, so that this plant has been used by indigenous tribes in the Amazon basin in Brazil and Colombia and Peru for centuries. And we call it a ceremony because the plant has been used as a guide to help us see. And in fact, ayahuasca is also called the death vine, right? And it's not a literal death. It's a dying to the smaller self, a dying to that which no longer serves us. And as we let go that which no longer serves, something is seeking to emerge through us. So the ayahuasca is an indigenous vine and leaf that acts in the body as a self-guide, right? It's a self-guided tour into consciousness, into your own consciousness and the consciousness of the allness that exists everywhere. And so one of the things that people really receive out of this is a sense of oneness. All of a sudden it's like, by Friday, after people have had 4 ceremonies, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, everybody's walking around going, oh my God, I love you. I love trees. I love clocks. Oh my God, I love this. It's a big love fest. Everything is beautiful because you've seen that connectivity and that oneness, and that sense of separation is diminished. So in a nutshell, ayahuasca is an indigenous a plant medicine that has been used by ancient cultures for many centuries.
But for our listeners that haven't done ayahuasca before, don't get excited because it's not fun. It makes you feel totally ill, very nauseous. And in fact, almost everyone, I think I was one of the only people that didn't actually throw up or get traumatic diarrhea. Although I did feel like throwing up. So it's not one of those pleasurable moments. It's not like, taking marijuana and chilling out for a while. So don't get excited about it. It's not one of those things you're going to get addicted to either, because it's almost like you don't get addicted to go and seeing a psychologist. You see some horrible things about yourself. So just to put everything on in reality, it may lead to some revelations and to a great life, but it's not all great. I just have to put that out there. And JJ,
I want to say one thing to that, Ali. First of all, around the addictive piece, many people come to Rhythmia and many people use ayahuasca to release addictions. All right. And that's one of the other things that really happens. People come in all different levels, all different states of their lives. But it's one of the things that, Geri, our founder, experienced was he released his addiction to Demerol. He had an amazing life and made lots of money. It seemed like the regular rags to riches story. But in the process, he had become heavily addicted to injectable Demerol. And ayahuasca helped him to release that instantly. And the other thing I want to say about the discomfort is it can be uncomfortable. My experience, I've probably maybe 10 or 12 ceremonies in my whole life, right? So not a ton compared to like shaman and stuff like that. But I didn't throw up until my 10th ceremony. And when you throw up, it's not the like, I ate some bad Chinese food and I feel sick kind of throw up. It is a total release of something, a coagulated thought form that is outpictured in your body as illness or tension or a limiting thought form. I mean, when you purge, we call it purging. When you purge in ceremony, you're to ask, what is that? What did I just release? So it's a feeling of release. But there can be some discomfort. You're absolutely right. But not everybody throws up and not everybody has diarrhea. But when you do, it's a really amazing thing compared to the way we normally think about it. But it's definitely work. This is not for the faint of heart. And so we really acknowledge the people that show up. I want to acknowledge you, to take the initiative to come down and work on yourself, and look at some really hard things about ourselves. And that's to be acknowledged. And this plant medicine helps us do that. And it's like super high intensity meditation and psychotherapy. It's like years of doing all that condensed into 4 days. So it's definitely intense.
Absolutely. And JJ, why is it done in a ceremony setting, and why is it important as to how that ceremony is set up and looks like? Because when I was looking at it, I considered different places. There's lots of places in Peru. There's lots of places in Costa Rica, and there's lots of what I would say are dodgy. It's an Australian term, I think, which means not so great places to do it. What are the ramifications of perhaps doing it with the wrong shaman or in the wrong type of ceremony? And also tell us, why is it always done in a ceremony setting as opposed to just going and drinking it and going off and having a big night?
Let me answer that last question first, and then talk about the dodgy nature of some of the other experiences. But the importance of the ceremonial setting is intention. And I think that whether you are going to work out at the gym or going out to lunch or starting your week, we know that intention is the key to life. When we set an intention, and the intentionality of our activities add a whole new dimension to what we're doing. So, a lot of people have participated with, mushrooms or LSD, or, they've done marijuana or whatever they've done, but it's been in a compulsive behavior, perhaps, or it may be just a partying kind of vibe, right? That's a whole different intention than when you surround an activity with ceremony. It adds a whole level of awareness. So it's done within a ceremonial setting because we're bringing an intention, a very clear and powerful intention, to work with this plant. We must bring our awareness. Where our awareness goes, energy flows. So the ceremonial aspect is to help us focus our awareness so that we can achieve a specific result. And it's in a guided setting by shaman, and we have a very high ratio of staff, helpers, shaman to guests at Rhythmia, because the shaman are what we would call holding the space. They literally create a safe space for you to experience what you need to experience. And it's protected and filled with love. And it's within that space that we can really let go, right? If we're feeling worried and concerned and not safe, then we're not going to let go and we're not going to have as deep of an experience. So it's in a ceremonial setting because it's intentional, and intention is the key to life. And it's also encouched in this protected environment so that you can fully take the deepest dive that you need. And one of the things that Geri saw in his experience, as he did plant medicine the first time, was, he went on a website and saw a pool and this great place. And then when he got to the place, it was nothing like what was on the website, and he asked the shaman, he goes, "Where's the pool?" He goes, "Oh, that's on the website, man." Like that's, so there's a lot of dodgy places out there. There's a lot of great places out there, but there have been situations where people have been taken advantage of by shaman, or you go out into the jungle and maybe you're not taken advantage of, but it's kind of scary. You're in the middle of nowhere. You speak the language, the accommodations aren't quite up to our standards. And all of those pieces are kind of what Geri experienced. So he wanted to create Rhythmia as a sort of 5-star luxury resort setting where we are licensed by the Costa Rica Ministry of Health. There's medical doctors and registered nurses and psychologists all there, as well as shaman and holistic staff, all there to support you on your journey in a clean, safe, monitored, medically licensed environment, so that it just sort of really appeals to the Western mindset who might not want to go out into the middle of the jungle alone, without the guidance and some of the safety measures that we consider necessary in the Western world. So we still want you to have that visceral jungle experience. You're in Costa Rica, you're in the jungle, there's monkeys and iguanas and all sorts of stuff cruising around the grounds of Rhythmia, but it's also in a protected and safe, medically licensed environment. So it's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think you explained that really well, JJ. And the way I felt was like I was able to go out of my comfort zone while staying in my comfort zone, if that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. That's really beautifully said, that you're, supported, and there's some key things, that there's some safety things that like, all right, we've got 96% plus 5-star ratings on TripAdvisor, one of the highest consumer ratings on TripAdvisor. So there's a sense of like, okay, these people know what they're doing, they've proven it over and over and over and over again. I can let go a little bit more, right? Even though going down and doing plant medicine in Costa Rica is out of your comfort zone. You explained it perfectly.
And look, JJ, I feel like I could talk to you forever about all of this, but hopefully that gives our listeners a bit of an understanding about what Rhythmia is all about and the sort of journey that you can go on with ayahuasca. This is by no means to say that we're endorsing it, although we are. But be careful where you do it, and also obviously try and look out to see whether it's actually legal. Like I believe in the US it's predominantly not legal, whereas Costa Rica it is. So it's always nice to know that you're not going to get deported. So on that note then, I just wanted to talk to you about one other thing that Rhythmia offers that a lot of people probably don't know about, and it's very new age, but it's quite an amazing thing. And I guess I just wanted to touch on it here with you, and maybe even in the future I'll interview one of your doctors about it. But can you share with us a bit about your stem cell therapy? You mentioned you were the salesperson, so I figure you know a bit about it.
Yes.
And maybe even sort of explain the difference between stem cell therapy that you guys provide versus, say, the fat and the muscle stem cell therapy that exists in the US.
Absolutely. So on the property of Rhythmia is a clinic that it's a phenomenal clinic where we do offer mesenchymal stem cells, and those are umbilical cord stem cells. And this treatment has tons and tons and tons of clinical data. There's so much research out there, double-blind studies, clinical trials, et cetera, on the efficacy of mesenchymal stem cells. And in fact, people are banking their children's umbilical cord stem cells for the future, because we know that they're really powerful in helping people heal. And also veterinarians. I speak to a lot of equestrians, a lot of people who said, "Oh yeah, we've used stem cells on our horses for years. It's approved for horses in the United States, but not for people." So the clinic down at Rhythmia we're one of a handful of licensed facilities. So we're licensed again by the Costa Rican Ministry of Health. And I'll just say really quickly, the important piece of that is in 1948, Costa Rica disbanded their army and put all of their money, their military budget, into the environment, education, and healthcare. So it's one of the longest, most stable democracies in Central America. A third of the country is protected environmental lands. They receive 100% of their power is from renewable resources, 100%. And they're a highly educated population with an amazing healthcare system. And so great, like tons of people, 40,000 citizens, U.S. citizens go annually for medical tourism alone to Costa Rica. So we're, the clinic is encouched within that setting. And the stem cells are amazing in the extent that they are able to, one, reduce inflammation, which is the underlying cause and driving factor of most disease and illness. And two, they communicate to your existing cells, causing them to act younger. So there's 4 types of people that would come to, our clinic to get the stem cell treatment. One is somebody who is suffering from chronic or acute pain, knee, shoulder, autoimmune issues, neurological issues are all aspects of, immune issues are all aspects that people might come for acute or chronic pain. And for a healing there. The second is, anti-aging and longevity, because these stem cells are really a very safe way to transfer youth into your body. By the time we're 19, we have less than 10% of the mesenchymal stem cells that we were born with. And by the time we're 35, they're producing at such a slow rate that they're only reproducing once every 48 hours. And by the time we're 65, they're only reproducing it once every 60 hours. And they're less vital and less vigorous. So the second type of person that would come to do the stem cell treatment is someone who's, interested in anti-aging and longevity. Third is someone who's, at their peak performance, like you, Allie. You're looking at stepping into a new iteration in your life. You've had a child, you've got all this is going on, lots of stuff going on in your life, and you want to operate at your top level. Or I'm starting, my job is super stressful. I'm not me personally, but for example, a surgeon or a pilot, or someone who's going out on a book tour, right? They just have to operate at peak, or athletes. I want to operate at my peak performance. And then the fourth type of person that might be interested in doing the stem cell treatment is just that person that's wants to be on the cutting edge of medicine. And I truly believe that, that mesenchymal stem cells will be the standard of care in 10 to 15 years, because it's just amazing. And proven again and again and again to reduce inflammation and increase the vitality and vigor of our bodies.
So, JJ, what's the benefit of that type of stem cell therapy versus muscle and fat, which is done in the US?
Sure. And there's lots of benefits to both. However, utilizing what we call adipose tissue, which are, fat derived, muscle derived, or bone marrow derived. One, it's super invasive and painful to get the tissue. The second is those cells that they're drawing on must be manipulated and proliferated in order for me to turn a fat stem cell into a stem cell that can be used in my heart, for example, or in my eyes. There has to be significant manipulation. And third, those stem cells are aged. They're as old as you are. They've experienced every trauma, every illness, every toxin, every disease, anything that you've experienced, they've experienced, and they're not operating at their peak. Mesenchymal stem cells are from the umbilical cord, and they are brand new. For example, a really quick statistic, if I took a stem cell from an umbilical cord and put it in a petri dish, one stem cell, it would reproduce once every 24 hours. And at the end of the month, I would have 1 billion new stem cells. By the time I'm 35, if I took a stem cell out of my body at 35 and put it into a petri dish, it would reproduce once every 48 hours. And at the end of the month, I'd have 32,000. And by the time I'm 65, that same stem cell would reproduce once every 60 hours, and I'd have 200 stem cells at the end of a month. So you can see the diminishing rate, right, of return. So using your own fat, adipose tissue stem cells, you just are taking stem cells that are suffering already from cell exhaustion and require a significant proliferation and manipulation in order to be usable, versus the mesenchymal stem cells, which are really transferring the potency and vitality of youth to your body. And it's not that you're incorporating this genetic material from someone else into the body. Rather, those stem cells are releasing exosomes, cytokines, protein factors, growth factors that communicate to your existing stem cells and cause them to act younger. So they cause your 35-year-old stem cells to act like a 10-year-old, right? And all of a sudden, you're all of the things that we notice from aging or from disease or illness start to dial back.
Okay, so why are the mesenchymal stem cell therapy not approved in the US? Is there some sort of concern around, I guess, danger?
So great question. One of the things that we see with a non-pharmaceutical therapeutics is that that big pharma does have a stranglehold on the FDA, and the FDA approval process is millions and millions of dollars and many, many years, and it's really geared towards chemical pharmaceutical companies. Petrochemical companies that are based in the pharmaceutical industry. They're controlling that what's approved and what's not approved, really. And so one of the reasons why these many alternative therapies are rejected is because of that. There is, however, an approved use of mesenchymal stem cells by the FDA in the United States, and they've approved it for bone marrow transplants. So if you're, have a bone marrow transplant for leukemia or, a chronic illness, the FDA has approved mesenchymal stem cells to be used to heal the area where they've extracted the bone marrow. So there are approved uses, but it's really a stranglehold by the pharmaceutical companies.
Right. So in other words, they do realize the effectiveness of it, but they'd rather make more money, so they don't want to approve it yet fully.
Correct, because it's hard to patent a stem cell.
Exactly. Got you. Okay, look, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, JJ, we're actually going to interview a couple of the other participants on the Rhythmia week that I did. But before we do that too, can you just tell us one personal thing about yourself in terms of tattoos? One question we ask all the guests on the show is, do you have a tattoo?
I do not have a tattoo. And I'll tell you, I never understood personal adornment until I got my first piece of jewelry. And then I realized why people tattoo their bodies, because it's a means of adorning oneself, and it makes you feel differently. At least that's what I understood of it. But I to this date, I haven't found something that spoke to me to say, I want to put this on my body permanently. I'm open to it, but I don't have a tattoo.
What is it that you wear all the time around your neck then?
Oh, yes. So I have a gold chain and the chain is my mother's, and there's a diamond pendant that was hers. It's my sisters took all of her jewelry, and I got this one. I was like, I'm taking that one. So first was the diamond pendant that's my mother's, and she transitioned about 4.5 years ago. So I keep her close to my heart, hangs right down at my heart chakra. And then I've added a gold symbol from Ghana when I studied with a beautiful man named Ishmael Teta in the Asante tribe in Ghana. And it is a sign of fidelity. And I have a cartouche from Egypt when I went to Egypt with Reverend Michael. And the cartouche is my name in hieroglyphics. And then finally, I'm of Lebanese parentage. And the Lebanese goddess of life, or the Phoenician goddess of life, also is an Ankh, and looks like an Ankh. And so I have that as well to remind me of the merged soul and my experience at Rhythmia.
Awesome. Just as well you don't have tattoos, otherwise that would cover your whole body, all of those together.
Yeah.
So awesome. JJ, thanks again for coming on and sharing everything about Rhythmia, everything about ayahuasca, about yourself. And just a big thank you.
Ali, it has been such a pleasure, and really even more so, it was so great to be with you down at Rhythmia. Our workout together was amazing, and our talk, and I'm just so honored to be in communication with you and in relation with you, and I look so forward to our continued communication and partnership.
Excellent. Thanks again. So today we've got a bit of a different show. We've interviewed the COO of Rhythmia, and now we're going to talk to a number of the guests that I met personally at Rhythmia when I did a week retreat there called Majesty, which was a group of women from all different realms of life came together, and it was an amazing experience. And so I'm going to talk to several of the different people and find out their experience. So first of all, Boniquca, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be speaking with you.
Look, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you, and I can't wait to hear your story. So first of all, maybe if you could just give a bit of introduction, not too long, just about who you are, where you've come from, why you came to Rhythmia, and then we'll get into the details.
Of course. Yeah, so my name is Boniquca Collins. I'm 29, from Jersey, but live outside of Philadelphia. And I decided to book Rhythmia because ayahuasca has been a call on my heart since 2010, especially 2012, especially in 2012. And I've always been drawn to Costa Rica. And once I watched the documentary about Rhythmia, the reality of truth, or truth of reality, and I just knew Costa Rica, ayahuasca, I'm down. And that's what I just knew. So that's why it brought me to Rhythmia, and it allowed me to meet you. And you are definitely a part of my story.
Awesome.
Definitely.
So have you ever done ayahuasca before?
No, not at all. First time.
Awesome. So bear in mind, a lot of our listeners haven't either. So they might sort of trip out on what you say. But share with us any part of your experience that you're sort of willing to share.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share the fourth ceremony. The fourth ceremony is like an all-nighter. And this is, the first week I've ever done anything like this. But this fourth ceremony in particular, I stepped completely and fully into my goddesshood, I'll call it. I stepped fully into my knowing as goddess Isis. And I also connected with Christ consciousness. And I just felt completely just like at one with everything and everyone. And usually during the ceremonies, we're all having our own personal journeys. We're all on our VIP mattresses at Rhythmia with our VIP buckets that we use to purge. And usually we're just like in our own personal journeys. But in particular, like the fourth ceremony for me, I stepped into like such a great power that it kept guiding me and leading me to heal ancestral wounds, whether that be rape, whether that be whatever, just in my family's history. And I was walking around. Well, first I connected with a shaman, Uncle Scooter, which is hilarious, by the way, because you think a shaman has to be like a serious name, but it's Uncle Scooter. And during that ceremony, I connected with him, and I was struggling within myself because a disease just kept coming up, HIV, HIV. And I'm like, I don't understand. I got tested, but it kept coming up. And then when I stood into my full power, I saw Uncle Scooter just healing people. And then I realized like, oh, I'm a part of this lineage. Oh, I supposed to help. I supposed to help heal people. So I was just going around, and usually people take healing very seriously, and it's serious, but I brought the playfulness to it. So it was a woman, a beautiful, beautiful soul who was in her own personal journey, and she was just on her knees, just crying, almost in prayer style. And Uncle Scooter was doing his shaman magic. And here I go, coming over, putting my hands on her, and looked at her, was like, "You're healed." And just had this biggest smile on my face. And then when I stood up, I had thoughts of Allie. I just saw Allie's face in my mind. And I felt her. And so I was just skipping. I'm skipping in the room where everyone is having their personal journeys. Can you talk about, I'll tell you how embarrassed I was, but I was skipping and I went over to Allie, and she was completely eyes closed in her own zone. And I touched her and she opened her eyes. Allie, you opened your eyes. We spoke about this after, but Allie opened her eyes and I said, "You're healed." And you know, when you have like, you're waking up your child in the morning for school and they're like, what's happening? Allie looked at me like that, but I didn't say anything else. I just like walked away, probably skipped away, honestly. And, you know, I went outside to finish healing and doing a whole Odyssey. I was a part of a whole, like a Homer book, Odyssey, Iliad. That was me. And then after me coming to terms with the acceptance of that I am God, because I connected with the Christ consciousness, that was major. It made me feel like, honestly, it was large. It was huge for me to grasp. I kept like spiraling in and out of awareness, but I was completely connected. At some points, it felt like the Truman Show with Jim Carrey. And you brought this up too, Allie, like just before we went into the ceremony, the fourth ceremony, you said it felt like the Truman Show, like everyone was putting on an act. And that's what it felt like. It felt like everyone knew I was Goddess Isis. And it felt like everyone knew I was like God. I was Jesus in a way. And it felt like everyone was just trying to like hide that truth from me. Like not hide it from me, but people were waiting till I stepped into my full power for them to celebrate me. But that experience was amazing. But then I also, after coming down from, being completely connected with Aya, and she never leaves your body. She's always there guiding you. And whatever happens.
Sorry, just to interrupt. So Aya, you mean ayahuasca, right?
Yes, ayahuasca. I call her Mother Ayahuasca, Mama Aya, whatever you feel, is on your heart. And she felt very familiar to me. And that was my first trip, but she was very familiar. It's like, we've done this before. We are one. And I will say that your experience with ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca, is your experience with yourself. Such a beautiful, profound experience. We may not all have the same exact experiences, but it's the experience that you need for your healing, for you to step into your power, for you to accept your goddesshood, for you to accept that you are God.
Interesting, Boniquca. So I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to all of this sort of thing. And so I was in my own zone and I remember you coming over and I didn't know it was you, but when I opened my eyes, I did. And it was quite an unusual experience for me. I was feeling really sick and determined not to purge. And I think out of all the 4 ceremonies, I didn't actually purge at all, but was sort of trying not to and feeling very nauseous. And then you came over and held my arm just for like, I don't know, a couple of seconds. And you said, "You're healed." And I wasn't even sure what you said until afterwards. And I was totally better to the point where the nausea went away and I got up and went and had another drink of ayahuasca. So wow. It was just profound to me. It was very bizarre. And I felt like you were some sort of goddess.
Wow.
So it was very weird. But everyone listening to this who hasn't done ayahuasca is going to think that this is totally bizarre, and I appreciate that. So how do you think that your experience and maybe even just your fourth experience or all of them together, how do you think that this is going to affect or is affecting your life in real life now?
So there is an integration period after this, because when you're at Rhythmia, it's high vibe food, high vibe people, high vibe situations that keep you just completely to yourself. You know who you are. And it's not that I was worried, but when I was leaving there, I was curious. Just stay with curious. Curiosity is a beautiful gift. I was just curious of how this was going to unfold, and it unfolded beautifully. Ali, when I went to the airport, leaving from Costa Rica to come back home, I kept being guided. Like I am a complete servant of God. I was guided to buy this, this headset for this gentleman who was like Monty, who was like in the airport, who was like looking at it, and something told me to buy that for him. And I bought myself a speaker too. Something told me to switch seats with this woman on a plane, and it turns out that she was in a relationship, a long distance relationship with a man that was sitting right next to her. And she wanted to do that, but she didn't know how to ask. I heard her energetically. I heard her. Or from like me sitting next to two women and me praying for like her son who just had a breakup. And I was like, I'm praying for him because like, it's just like, I see the invisible connections between people. I see it. All I've ever done in my life was smoke pot. And I always felt super connected to plants, where plants would take me to a whole nother world, like it would elevate me. And my body, it really does connect with plants very well. And these invisible connections, they're all around us. It's not just for me to see. Some people see them in their own way. I see them, they're invisible. I don't see literally strings. I just see how a person looks at another person, or how one person will raise their hand, another person will raise their hand. And I know somehow they're going to connect in life. It's very subtle. It's easy to miss, but for some reason I got the gift of seeing the invisible.
And did you know that you had this before doing ayahuasca?
I knew it before. I definitely knew it before. I knew it before within my own self, but smoking cannabis, it made it even more clear. It was like, oh, you can no longer deny this gift. And that's cannabis. And what Mother Ayahuasca does is like, you can no longer hide in the shadows of who you are, or who you think you are, or whatever illusion you created for yourself. It's time for you to step into the light. And that's what plants are so sacred. They're so beautiful. They are meant to be honored and used as a sacred tool to help you expand your awareness. You don't have to. Breathing, oh my goodness, don't talk about the breathing. The breath works, the transcendental breath work. I realize I'm having twins and I'm going to be a mother this lifetime. So it's not all about plants, but like in life is a sacred ceremony. And if you treat it as such, you will see it unfold so beautifully in your life. You will see the people that come to you and the connections that you establish are for a reason. Everything is by divine order, with divine timing, for a divine purpose. And just trusting in that and knowing in that and settling into that, getting comfortable with that, knowing that you're completely taken care of. We don't have to overthink, overplan, over-strategize. I've seen these invisible connections. I've seen the flow, and I'm a budgeter. I have an Excel spreadsheet, okay? And I still got a budget later, but I feel so in flow and so in tune that I know I'm taken care of. And I think that's the greatest message, to know that you are safe.
So,
you are never not safe.
So, Bo, it sounds like you've just got a lot more clarity on the purpose of your life. Is that right?
I definitely feel like I am a speaker. I know that that's going to come around somehow. And I feel like I am a healer. I'm a powerful healer, a powerful creator. And to just pass on the transmissions that I receive, because I also realize I'm a channel. I'm a beautiful vessel for God's work. And however that manifests, I'm here to accept it. I'm here to work in that, to be that. and to allow and to hold that space for others to step into their own right, their birthright. As a healer, I don't heal people. What I do, I hold space for the healing, for self-healing to occur. That's who I am, and that's what I'm here for. And however that looks, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Awesome. And can you see yourself doing an ayahuasca ceremony again?
Allie, that's a great question. So I wake up I literally wake up in a full-blown communion with ayahuasca. Like when I'm sleeping, I'll wake up and then I'll either have downloads or I will have like just certain knowings, or I'm literally in a ceremony as if I just drank the brew.
So you sort of feel like you're still reliving it.
I'm still reliving it. Like my life is one big, huge sacred ceremony, and Mother Aya is not. She's still with me. And what's crazy is I still feel the call to Rhythmia. I'm just waiting to see how it all unfolds for me to like go back. I told family and friends, and not even just like trying to be like a salesperson for Rhythmia. No, it was just me sharing my truth and my experiences, and they were being called to ayahuasca themselves. So I'll love to see how this plays out, but I can see my family or friends or whomever I tell, they're going to be at Rhythmia. Rhythmia is a beautiful place for this sacred healing, and I see them going.
Wow. Boniquca, thank you so much for sharing your story, and I look forward to seeing how this all unfolds in your life.
Thank you so much, Allie. And I look forward to seeing how your life unfolds after all of your experiences. We have to keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Geri. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was at Rhythmia during Majesty week. It was a bunch of women. I think there was like almost 60 of us who came to experience ayahuasca, to look into our journey. Some women were there for addiction, some women were there for answers, and some women were just there to research ayahuasca. It wasn't my first time that I've drank plant medicine. My first experience was very intense, really changed my life. So many things changed afterwards. They say that when you do any kind of inner work, it's a reflection of your outer world, and that your outer world may change dramatically. And in my case, it totally did. So when I went to Rhythmia to do the week, there was a lot of change in my life that I wanted to sort out or to dig deeper into. One of them being that I had found out back in August of 2018 that my husband had been having affairs with many women, starting 7 years into, I'm sorry. He had been cheating on me for 7 years, over 7 years, with over, I guess, 15, 16, 17 women, and some men thrown in just for the fun of it. So my whole world turned topsy-turvy. And one of my messages in my first ayahuasca journey was to wake up and to start creating. So after all that happened, and my husband became diagnosed as a sex addict and entered a 12-step program, but it left me hanging with a lot of unanswered questions, and it left me with my own trauma that I now had to work at. So going into the plant medicine at Rhythmia was more of an inner searching and an inner healing for me. And the first night ceremony was very very disorienting for me. It was a lot of visions. Immediately, I had what's called psychic surgery. You know, I felt my mouth being worked on. I felt parts of my body being pulled. I saw these little gold nanobots, the size of a dime, but they looked like spiders, but they were alive. They actually blinked. They had little eyes, and they went into my body. And I didn't so much feel them in my body, but I also felt hands working on me, pulling my head and moving me. And I also felt held down on my face, my body held down. I couldn't move. So after that, I thought it was really cool. in spite of all the moving and shaking. I experienced all of us in the room as babies, in the little baby plastic bins for newborns. And these huge beings were watching over us. And that was kind of cool, not so disorienting. And then after that, I immediately went into being a skeleton, being bones, being mummified bones, which was kind of really cool. I felt very majestic. It felt really neat. And I knew that immediately that my bones were on display somewhere in a museum. So that was a really cool experience. It was kind of empowering. Then I went to sleep and knew I was being worked on even more, woke up and then started to go into ceremony in the middle of the room, went outside, kind of acclimating myself back into the world. Second night ceremony was just as intense, started out with the visions again, very Art Deco-y, very bright, vivid colors, going into a room where I felt trapped. I couldn't leave the room. I had the feeling that I couldn't leave the room. Like they, whoever they were, didn't want me to leave the room. And I was looking and there were 2 chairs in the corner and I realized that I was just being a chair in the room. Like I had no purpose. I wasn't doing anything but being a chair. And I remember coming out of it and seeing one of the shamans and saying, I'm not a chair, I'm not a chair. And he did a blessing on me. And I'm like, stay with me. You don't understand. They want to put me back in the room. They don't want me to leave. And just being in a panic over that and then coming out of it and then realizing the next day I had a vision of my mother and my grandmother walking with me. And I realized that I was born premature and that my whole life they protected me and they protected me as a child. And so I kind of stayed in the house a lot. And even now as an adult, a woman in my own home, I'm very comfortable being in the house. And I realized that I put myself in my own home. I don't put myself out there. I don't look around. And I blessed my mother and I blessed my grandmother. And I thanked them for the protection that they gave me, but that I no longer needed it. I need to walk my own path. Very profound, very healing. I also that night went outside and stood outside and I felt my soul in the distance. And I stood there and I felt my soul coming toward me, almost like a ball of energy, the way I could describe it, like a bowling ball going down the alley and hitting me and going into my chest. And I felt whole. I felt peaceful. And I wrapped myself in a blanket, laid in a hammock, and told my story to the stars, which was really cool because the trees bent down to listen to me. Third night on plant medicine, very different, almost like a smack to it. I do a lot of healing work. One of my biggest complaints is not being the healer that I know that I can be, that other people tell me I should be. And the pains in my body started right away that I needed to throw up. Not so much visions, but discomfort. And every time I would feel pains running through me, the question in my head was, do you want to be a healer? And the answer came up, yes. I kept on saying yes. And every time I'd get more pain and yes, and more pain, the question and yes, more pain and the question and yes. So finally I said, yes, whatever it takes. And then I was allowed to purge. And then after that, I realized that I needed to lay down because they were going to work on me some more. And one of the cool things was Mother Aya told me that she would leave a quarter-size amount of herself, of the medicine inside me. It's on my right side. It's in my body. And that she would help guide me in my healing practice. So I give thanks for that, and I take it very seriously that she's here and inside me. So that's kind of cool. Third night on the medicine was crazy. Going in a little frightened because it was Yahé, and the way we were described the purging effects of it. I didn't purge on Monday or Tuesday. I did on Wednesday a tiny bit, but on Thursday I was worried and went into it. Immediately went into vision, and I saw energy of everyone. I saw the energy of the room running in streams. I saw panels with shapes on them coming down from the ceiling, just panels side by side by side by side, huge sheets with just shapes on them. I saw the trees with energy, just lights, and the beauty of it. In my arms, I saw energy flowing through my arms, and I looked at the people around me and I saw energy there, and I would have loved to have walked around and really seen it, but I was purging too much to be able to get up and enjoy it. And again, after that, I realized they were going to work on me again. So I had a lot of work done on me. Coming home and getting acclimated the first week, I was on a Zen high. I probably didn't even need an airplane to go home. So I was on this high. This week, everything that is in my life that I have to deal with is coming up real time, deal with it. And I realize I'm bringing things up. And it's not so much about the affairs. It's not so much about the other women. It's me. It's inside me that I need to heal whatever this is. I can't keep on punishing my husband for what he did because it's inside me. So this pain that's coming out, this crying, this wandering, this questioning back and forth isn't so much about him, but it is about me. And I am probably going to be doing hypnosis to see where this core wound is, because it's so hurting, and I so can't step around it that it's a block. And I really would like to heal it. Would I go back to Rhythmia? I wish I didn't have a sense of responsibility to my life, my job, my family, because I would have stayed that second week, done 2 weeks in a row, as hard as it was to get down into those deeper layers. That being said, yes, I probably will be going back this summer with my husband and doing it again to delve deeper into the soul, deeper into my story, not only in this lifetime, but every other lifetimes, because the wound that I'm feeling now is so deep. I don't think it's from this lifetime. I think it's from lifetimes past that I still have to clear. And I think ayahuasca will do that for me. And I realized that as hard as it was and as disorienting that I thought it was in the moment, my experience afterwards, when it settled and I got to see it clear-headed, I realized that the visions were very profound and personal to me, and they were healing. And I honor my experience that I had at Rhythmia. I honored the shaman for helping me through this. And I honor the women, because I believe we were all there at that same time to heal a lot of things that had to do with women all over, women ancestor. I felt it had an earth healing to it. I think we all came together with grace and wisdom. Whatever we did personally, we did. But I think we did it beyond ourselves and healed a big aspect of this part of the universe through our journeying, and I'm grateful for every one of them. And so that's my experience at Rhythmia. I think everybody should go. Anyone who is able to experience plant medicine should go. We really need to clear ourselves on a karmic, on a energetic level. And I think ayahuasca really does it. But I think also it's the whole program at Rhythmia that did it. It's the workshops, it's the yoga, it's the breath work, it's everything, the food, just the beingness of Rhythmia in Costa Rica, all came together to help you, to nurture you, to get you through what you either need to get through, or if you're having this amazing orgasmic experience, it helps guide you through that too. Hopefully next time I'm hoping for the amazing orgasmic experience. So that's my story, and thank you for listening.
Hello, this is Kara White, and I am from Rapid City, South Dakota in the U.S., and really excited to share my Rhythmia experience. I'll start out by saying that Rhythmia so far exceeded my expectations, that I can't believe it. I don't think I've ever gone to a retreat of any sort that just so wildly exceeded my expectations. It was much like many of the reviews that I read on TripAdvisor. I felt very, very held by everyone there. that worked there, and that shamans, and even especially my wonderful group of women, Allie, you included. It's hard to summarize 4 nights of plant medicine ceremonies into a short little blip. But overall, what I want to say is I come away from this experience feeling much more in touch with myself and the universe and universal truths that I have studied and have known intellectually. I feel like after my Rhythmia experience, I know them on a much deeper level, and I'm feeling like I am able to actually begin to live these truths in a very different and deep way, and therefore really getting back to who I really am. Rhythmia talks about the miracles. Show me who I've become, merge me back with my soul at all costs, and heal my heart. Leaving Rhythmia now a week later, I can honestly say I got my miracle. And not to say that there's not still work to do in my life, and that I need to keep up with my habits of taking care of myself. But overall, yes, I got my miracle. One of the things that I shared with the group, I think on the last day or the closing ceremonies, was the reason that really got me to Rhythmia in the first place. So back in August of 2018, I got bitten on my arm by a black widow spider, and I got very sick. I have had autoimmune issues for several years, and something about the spider bite triggered those. And it started out with about 48 hours after the bite, I was at a restaurant with friends and passed out cold. From there, a few days later, I ended up, getting fever, and turned out my white cells were critically low, and I had a lot of other just bad symptoms. This went on and off for about 3 or 4 months. And so in my ceremony, on the very first night, I was visited by a larger than life image of a spider. And it was almost a bit cartoony. But as soon as I saw her in ceremony, I knew she was my spider. I called and I wanted to call her Mrs. Spider. So when she appeared, she kind of shook her head, and it wasn't as if she was verbally saying anything, but what she relayed to me was the download that I got when I saw Mrs. Spider was that she said, I bit you to get you here. I bit you to get you here. Because I had been feeling like, why is this all happening to me at the time when it happened? And it was so beautiful. I understood it then, and I began to cry. And the other download that came from her was that everything happens for you. Everything happens for you. And in that moment, I understood that I was being shown all of this beauty and connection and understanding of myself and the way I have been in the world because of that experience, making me really dig deep on looking for something to help me. So I just felt so much gratitude from her. I also was shown things from my childhood that made me understand why I had, had my autoimmune issues, particularly the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So I was shown at a young age that it was experiences that I had at a young age taught me, or I don't think anyone did this deliberately, but what I took from those experiences was maybe it wasn't safe for me to speak out, and that I needed to be very careful, and I needed to, make sure everyone else was happy all the time and be a very good girl. And I was definitely, one that wanted to please everyone. So I was shown that, and I purged with getting just, I didn't throw up, but I opened my mouth and kind of made this hissing sound, and all of this blackness, I saw all of this blackness, all of this anger, and all of the words that I had swallowed for years and years and years just coming out of me. On another night, I was shown, I also had major food issues, which I think can go, I think a lot of women do, especially if you are trying to be perfect and a people pleaser. So I was always worried about being the perfect weight, and I developed an eating disorder in high school that carried on through college. And I saw that I carried so much shame, and what I was doing was eating my feelings, eating them and swallowing them, and not releasing what I needed to say. So I was able to release that shame. And then I was shown by Mother Ayahuasca the beauty and connection in all things. I saw not only this world, but other worlds, and felt an extreme sense of love and peace. And I just quickly have made a list of the lessons that I've learned. So I'm going to go through those next. Number one, these are downloads that I got during my time. I feel generally, like I said, more at ease. So let go with the flow. So let go and go with the flow. Be present. I saw that I was impatient with people, and she showed me that I wasn't truly there. And the question came up in all my seeking. She asked me, "Where do you think you're going?" And it became apparent to me that I was always going for and searching for something else, but I wasn't being really present with the people and what I had in my life, because the truth is, the beauty I was seeking was right there in front of me. Listen. She showed me I wasn't truly listening with love. Listen to connect. Listen to love. Listen to see. Of course, everything is connected, which I just touched on. And then a huge one was trade being right for being happy. I had this feeling that I have had to explain myself, and this need to be right, and that people needed to understand me, but they don't. Follow your heart and find your joy. When you follow your heart, you don't need to explain yourself, like I said before. And she showed me that it's such a miracle to be on this earth, and that we are meant to be happy and joyful. So that is a summary of my experiences, and guided by such amazing guides, shamans, helpers, the staff at Rhythmia. And also, I don't think this healing could have happened without all of the women that came together. My heart is just, it feels like it's sitting outside of myself, and I'm so grateful for each and every woman. And for you, Allie, for doing this and pulling these stories together, because my hope is that it'll help a lot of other people find plant medicine and find their healing. So thank you for doing that. Okay, bye-bye.
My name is Melissa Peel, and I recently completed a trip to Rhythmia right in the beginning of early March for the Majesty week, which is an all-women's retreat. I am somewhat new to the plant medicine field, as just a few months back I tried the very first dose of plant medicine. It was not ayahuasca, it was something else run by some people who have studied under shamans. That really was starting to help me unlock a lot of ancestral lineage type stuff that it seems like I had been carrying with me. And then just a few months after that, I'd gotten the call to, from Spirit, that is, to really start jumping down the pathway of ayahuasca, which felt a little bit more intense for me than the other medicine that I had tried. But I figured because I was being guided by Spirit, I would go for it. I was actually really pleasantly surprised by the whole experience. First and foremost, Rhythmia is a beautiful place, and it's just basically like a 5-star resort in the middle of Costa Rica, and you just feel like you're absolutely in paradise and very well taken care of. I was very impressed by the fact that it's the first world's medically licensed facility for plant medicine. So not only do they have, suitable staff that's available in the event that there's an emergency, but they also have staff for every single thing, every single detail is covered. What I was most impressed by is actually during the ceremonies themselves, there's quite a large number of people participating, and yet there's still staff available all over the place, all the time, making sure everybody is safe and taken care of. The actual journey itself with ayahuasca was much more gentle than I would have expected because I had heard so many things about people pooping and throwing up all over the place. And that honestly was not my experience, but I do understand that everybody does have an experience very different. The thing that I wish I had known better about ayahuasca prior to starting was that this particular medicine is really guided to help a person release the bitterness to get to the sweetness, which for me meant, in my own specific journey, discovering some really traumatic events that I had blocked out, but then not only just feeling shattered by this, but also needing to have the understanding that I would have closure at the end. This was a little scary to me not to understand that at first, thinking, oh my gosh, what did I just uncover? But the good news is I went through the process of Rhythmia, which they're very good about educating us about each day, what the process is going to look like and what to expect. I was able to trust and have faith that I was in a safe environment and that the medicine is here to help me, not hurt me. From the whole experience, I was able to come out with the sweetness, which was coming to a place of acceptance and forgiveness of the traumas that I've experienced, and more importantly, come to a place of peace within myself, and even to be able to offer that to some of my family members who my trauma was involved with as well. So this was just like a life-changing experience. Not only that, but also some other incredible things happened during this journey. During our class, they discussed the idea that surgeries psychically or spiritually may actually happen. I did get to experience 2 of those, in which case my jaw that had been locked up for years with a very tight bite had been released of any and all pain and pressure, which was just blew my mind because that's incredible. And the second thing that happened was I had some sort of spiritual surgery on my ears, in which case this was able to help me connect on an even deeper level with spirit. For a profession, I do connect with spirit on a day-to-day basis, as I'm a professional psychic medium. I also learned after this psychic surgery, so to speak, on the ears, that now I'm able to connect with the spirit of nature because I was able to hear things that I've never been able to hear before. One of the most miraculous things about it was, as a result of releasing some of the blockages in my chakras due to the trauma that I've endured over 30 years ago, that created a lot of anxiety in my life. After doing the ayahuasca journey, I must say, any and all anxiety that I used to experience is gone. I felt a lightness in my entire body that I've never felt in my life before. I could really feel a clearing in my root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, and throat. and I literally felt so much lighter. While I was at Rhythmia, I was journaling constantly because my connection to spirit was so strong. During one of the last days, I was writing something, and all of a sudden I realized it was a message from spirit to go jump into the deep end of the pool, which was kind of strange because I don't do that. When I was about 5, I had a traumatic experience almost drowning in a neighbor's pool. And since then, I always had anxiety around water. I was uneasy. I made sure that I was always in the shallow end, had to touch the bottom of the pool, would not go into the deep end because it just felt scary and unknown, and it would bring up the same sort of trauma that I felt when I was 5. Therefore, I never really felt like I could get the concept of swimming because my breath would always get me in the way. So here it was, getting guided to go jump into the deep end of the pool. And considering I'd seen so many other miraculous things happen within myself during the week at Rhythmia, I thought, you know what the heck, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So sure enough, I'd asked one of the other people to take a video of me just to see what would happen. And I decided to run and jump into the deep end of the pool. And I was blown away. It was the first time in my entire life I was able to come up to the top of the surface of the water, actually with my breath, not anxious, not nervous, not scared I was going to drown. And I actually knew how to swim. I swam a couple laps just because it was miraculous and I couldn't even believe it. And this goes to prove to me that by clearing any and all traumas that I had brought to the surface through the ayahuasca journeys, I was able to do things that I never believed I would have been able to do. It's almost like, I don't know, superhero powers or something like that came out in me. And ayahuasca was able to help me go deeper within my soul to realize what I was actually capable of doing. Those are just some of the simple examples of the many realizations and aha moments that I had as a result of ingesting the medicine. And honestly, after this, week-long retreat, I must say that I'm still watching miraculous things happen. Within the 2 weeks since I arrived at Rhythmia, I've been able to drop 14 pounds, which prior to that was never able to happen. I feel so much more clear and more clean, physically, emotionally, mentally. And I also feel like there's been a shift around how I view myself and my body. Prior to this, I used to struggle with a lot of anxiety and I would shove down the emotion of anxiety or fear with food. This was something that was revealed to me during the ayahuasca journey as to why that happened. But I always knew that this was a problem, but I really never could pinpoint why. Since clearing this trauma, I've been able to have a grip on my emotions, which meant that I don't need to abuse my body in any way, shape, or form with food or any other unhealthy habit. Instead, I've actually noticed that I've integrated very well over the last week since I've returned, eating very healthy, staying more active, connecting with nature, and more importantly, just relaxing. I'm not worried about the how I'm supposed to or what's going to happen. Instead, I'm in a much more relaxed, trusting space of just being able to sit back and allow. So absolutely, I would do ayahuasca again in a heartbeat. I would certainly go back to Rhythmia because it feels like such a warm, nurturing, safe environment. And I just loved the people that I was able to meet because they're in such a high vibrational space. I know that this is going to affect my life here on out, and I'm kind of actually looking forward to and excited about whatever happens to come up next. If you're ever considering going deeper within yourself or doing something that is definitely outside the box or that typical therapy won't be able to help you access, I highly recommend plant spirit medicine regardless, but especially at Rhythmia because of all the details and all the things that they really put together to make this environment work, knowing that most importantly, those clients that come are safe. So thank you so much for listening, and hope this helps.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.